Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Cryptographic Asset Show, brought to you by cryptographic.com. We are more than honored to be sitting down today with Derek Gumb, an independent trader in the crypto space who's been in the space since 2011. Thank you so much, Derek, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Justin, for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So why don't you tell us kind of how you got interested in, I guess in 2011, Bitcoin. Was Litecoin even out? I believe that was the year Litecoin was created. So tell us how you got into crypto.
Sure. So in 2011, I was doing an internship at a climate change nonprofit in Manhattan. And we had a lot of time on our hands. And in between a break at one point, I found out about a hack against Sony company. And in this hack, a black hat group by the name of LulzSec broke into the digitally hacked into the Sony database and stole millions of customers' information. And they just released it online, like a mailing address, credit card info, et cetera. And they did it kind of in a nihilistic fashion, not for any profit. And they went by the name of LulzSec, and they had a Twitter account. And so I was following this story, and then I went to their Twitter account and I looked in their bio, and they had a Bitcoin donation address. And that was the first time I ever saw the word Bitcoin. And I said, what is this? And I started researching Bitcoin, and that's how I went down the crypto rabbit hole. And pretty quickly into my research, I got on Bitcoin Talk forum. And this was a couple months after Satoshi had gone dark. This was summer 2011, because before that, Satoshi actually had been engaging with people on the forum. And anyway, there were all these conspiracy theories about why Satoshi went dark, and everyone was kind of talking about that. And I was 20 years old at the time, and I don't really have, at the time, I didn't really have any technical background. I was more of a liberal arts person. So I had no understanding of market cap, of macro, microeconomics, of inflation, et cetera. So I was reading all these forum posts of all these people talking about all this stuff and gold and market cap. And at the time, Bitcoin was worth about $15. And one guy on a post made this grand prediction. And he said, Bitcoin is going to hit $1,000. It's going to take over the whole world reserve currency. It's going to be hyper Bitcoinization. And in my head, I was just laughing at him, like, this is not possible. And anyway, I just could not get Bitcoin out of my mind. And I kept researching it, kept going into it. And meanwhile, the price is creeping up, I believe, 15, 20, et cetera. And I just said, all right, I just need to buy at least one. So I was living in New York City.
So just to back up, this is
Sure.
On the way to $30.
Yes.
Before it collapsed like back to 2.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So because of anti-terrorism laws in New York City, there was essentially like no way for me to get my money in the system. And I'm sure there was some way, but every avenue I looked in was a dead end. So the only solution I found was on Second Life. And that's an MMORPG video game. And in this video game, it's kind of a metaverse. It was kind of the initial metaverse. They have a world and you have an avatar and you can buy real estate, et cetera. And anyway, they had an in-game currency called Linden dollars. And so I sent US dollars to my account, purchased Linden dollars. Then I found a Bitcoin dealer online, and I took my avatar and met up in the metaverse, the early proto metaverse, with this Bitcoin dealer. And at the time, this was the peak, the $30 peak. So I was FOMOing in, and he charged me $33. He charged me a 10% interest for one Bitcoin. And I was angry about that 10% interest, 10%, higher. And anyway, that was how I got my first Bitcoin. Yeah.
Can you tell us more about what it was like in those early days on Bitcoin Talk? Yeah. In fact, one of my main interests is the history of Bitcoin specifically. So could you comment on Bitcoin Talk, the feeling of the community just after Satoshi left? Were people wondering if he was going to come back at that point? What else? Can you tell us about, like, where did you try to buy Bitcoin? So let's just start with like Bitcoin talk, and then like where did you try to buy Bitcoin and fail?
Sure. So yeah, so kind of as I mentioned, I was very much a neophyte in economics and anything financial related. I had no idea what was going on. So people were saying all sorts of weird things on the forums that I thought were weird at the time. Um, People, were making these grand prognostications, like we're part of the new financial wealthy elite. Like we're gonna.
So
This is insane.
let me just interject. Sorry, I usually don't do this,
Sure.
but that was Atlas who said, "Congratulations, we are the new elite gentlemen," or something like that. Gentlemen, we are the new elite. I believe that account has since been deleted on
Mm.
Bitcoin Talk. But go ahead.
Yeah. So, I, I don't know how much I can say because at the time I didn't really take it seriously. But I was very intrigued and kind of from a political philosophy perspective that, oh, this is a new monetary system. Something is clearly going on, kind of similar to the new internet. But as far as where I tried to purchase Bitcoin, there were all these weird money remittances services where you were sending uh, money to weird, sketchy exchanges. And for whatever reason, from what I remember, New York would not let me remit money because you had to put your address in or something. And at the time, I don't remember if Mt. Gox was around. I joined that a bit later. But yeah, so I just found Second Life, and that was kind of a workaround for me.
What about local Bitcoins at that time?
Yeah, I remember on the forums, people were warning about local Bitcoins because there were these young kids that were kind of tricking people to reveal their seed. And and anyway, then they were posting on social media of like them in Lambos. And this was in like 2011, 2012. So they must have had a lot of Bitcoin. But I don't know. I just never really did that. I wish I did in retrospect, but yeah.
So can you tell us about Bitcoin going to $30 and that whole process? It collapsed down to approximately $2, I think. And then we'll kind of go from there, more about your story.
Sure. Yeah. So as I said, I bought Bitcoin at the peak, and this is kind of in my history with Bitcoin. This has kind of happened a couple of times where I FOMO in, and then it crashed, and then I said, "Oh, okay, this is kind of a scam, like whatever." And I went to Thanksgiving that year, 2011, and I told my whole extended family about Bitcoin. I said, "Oh, I'm very interested in this. I bought a little bit," and they all laughed at me. They all said, "Oh," I was the youngest one at the time in the whole family. They all laughed. They said, "Oh, haha, you and your internet coins, magic beans." That was funny. But so then I kind of forgot about Bitcoin and continued on with my life. And I graduated from college in 2013, and then I moved to Japan and taught English there for 2 years in a small village in the mountains. And there was about 1,000 people in this village. I was the only non-Japanese person. And anyway, I got reacquainted with Bitcoin, and I believe it was then again kind of going back up. I believe it was going up to $1,000 at then kind of the next peak. And Litecoin, I was involved in that, and so I started putting some money in. And again, I started buying at the top, and I had all my money in Mt. Gox. And as we all know, Mt. Gox crashed. I believe that kind of coincided with the crash from $1,000, and I was wiped. I had a few Bitcoins, and completely wiped, zeroed out. And I said, "Oh, this is a scam. I got scammed again." And sorry, these are my alerts. But so I got scammed again and lost everything. And then from 2013 on, I completely disregarded it. And I said, "This is a scam. I'm over." So from 2013 to early 2017, I had no involvement. So then 2017, early in January, my friend kept telling me, "Oh, Bitcoin, Bitcoin." I said, "No, man, no, I got burned." Then I finally looked into it again, and I found out about Ethereum. And I saw that was around the time of the DAO hack. So Ethereum had plunged. And that kind of clicked in my head because Bitcoin had done that when there was, Mt. Gox, it plunged a lot, then rebounded. So I said, oh, this is a good opportunity. And so one day I went to a Starbucks with a Ethereum white paper and started reading it. And I just started shaking. And I said, this is incredible. This is clearly the next step in the evolution of crypto. I just instantaneously got it. And finally took the plunge, signed up with Gemini in about March 2017. Ethereum had been creeping up from $10 to 15, bought my first one at $18, and basically sold what little stocks I had to try to put it in. And I actually asked my parents for a $15,000 loan because it took a while for stocks to kind of clear. They declined, and because it was just so risky at the time. But anyway, plowed all my money in, went all in to Ethereum, and just kind of rode that whole thing up.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like in the Japanese village? Did they laugh at you when you told them about magic internet money, for instance?
Yeah. So I told a couple people. I studied Japanese in high school and college, so I was able to speak, and I got quite good while I was there. And so I had friends, other teachers, other Japanese people. So I told some people, and no one was interested. And this has happened in my whole life with Bitcoin. Just almost like a fraction of a percent of the people I told actually bought. And actually Mt. Gox was headquartered in Tokyo. So actually when they went bankrupt, somehow they had my Japanese address. I don't know, I guess I input it. They mailed me a letter saying we're going bankrupt. And it was like a little pamphlet with information about the class action lawsuit. So I actually have that still. So I think that maybe is kind of like a cool artifact to have.
Were you harmed financially by the Mt. Gox crash?
No, I wouldn't say so. I was on the JET program in Japan, which is the Japanese government's English teaching program, and the salary was like $25,000 or something. It was very low. You're not really doing it for the money. But I put in a couple thousand, which for me was a lot at the time. But I've always been someone that jumps in and understands the risks and takes accountability and responsibility. So I've always looked ahead and tried not to regret. I've had so many mistakes with crypto, so many regrets. Just move forward, and it's okay.
I think that's one of the biggest benefits of having been in Bitcoin early and having missed those opportunities for whatever reason. Like my story kind of can be boiled down to having paid probably like way more in rent and food than everyone else, considering that I was like earning a lot of the time in Bitcoin, for instance. And to have learned to like not look back, not regret, not judge oneself has been like invaluable in many, many ways. Can you kind of speak about the trials and tribulations over the years and how they've affected you and turned you into you?
Yeah, no, yes. And kind of as we mentioned before, one thing I love about crypto is that everyone kind of has their own personal story. And for me, it's so intertwined with my life, and it's had so many effects on my life. And so for example, I mentioned that I got into Ethereum in 2017. And at the time I was working at Governor Cuomo's office in New York City as an advance man, which is essentially event planning. And I basically rode Ethereum up through the bull market, was making trades, Neo, Binance Coin, Dragon Chain, et cetera, all these different coins at the time. And anyway, I ran it up where in early 2018, I took the plunge and quit my job. And I quit my job at the top. I was one of those guys. And then I went on a 1-year-long trip around the world. Went to Thailand, Singapore, Vietnam, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Vancouver for the Dogecoin conference, England, et cetera. And through this whole time, 2018 on, the market was in a bear, was crashing. So in January, when I got to Singapore, my first stop, the first week into my trip, I hit portfolio all-time high. And that was the peak. And I was on top of the world and this was amazing. And little did I know, every single week crashing and crashing. And I sold a bit, but to fund my travels, but not enough. And by when the dust settled in December 2017, I felt like I woke up from a dream, and the market is at a low, and I'm just like, what did I do? What happened? And that was a huge learning experience, as I'm sure for most people in the crypto space. And it was a wake up call. Like, this is volatile. This is real life. The good times don't last in terms of your portfolio. So be careful. So, however, this time I did not quit. I stuck with it. I had no doubt. I just continued on, and the whole time learning, reading, trading books, watching YouTube videos, reading white papers, just in it. And I just knew from my experience this was going to come back. And I'm glad I did, because again, in 2020 COVID crash, I was at the computer when Bitcoin hit $3,000, and I bought like close to 5,000, maybe 4,000, and a calm came over me. And I said, if this is how we go out, I'm going down with the shit. And I had everything in. And yeah, you just kind of learn through years of experience and years of failures. You learn to kind of get zen, ideally, and see the chart for what it is, and understand that fear is temporary, and crypto will be around forever.
And opportunities will abound, even in the bearish moments. So can you maybe speak to how you got interested in the charts in trading?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, for my whole life, I've been a gamer. Final Fantasy VII is my favorite video game. And to me, how I got into Bitcoin was through a video game, was through Second Life. So for me, I just was naturally drawn to trading and to charts because it seems like a video game. It seems very natural to me. And I like to say it's a video game. It's a MMORPG with terrible graphics and real life consequences. And so, through the years, I've tried my trading style has evolved so much. And in the beginning, in 2017, let's call it the beginning of my trading, because from 2017 on, I'm just every single day. So from 2017 on, in the beginning, I kind of didn't really look at the charts. I was only kind of looking at the price, which in retrospect was kind of odd. And I actually had a lot of success because it kind of took, I don't know, it took out the emotion maybe. And it was also a bull market, so it's not that hard. But
may I comment on that? I think that
sure.
like there's a psychological element to this. And so the price represents quite a bit in people's minds. And the charts kind of just, I view the charts as like a reflection of human action. And I think that, I guess, human perspective has a lot to do with the numbers. And so I view as like round numbers is significant no matter what the chart's telling me at all times, as just kind of a maybe broader framework. People like round numbers, for instance, right? So I think that there is something to be said for that, although I wouldn't just make trades based on only that. But it's always in the back of my mind, the psychology behind all of these prices.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of a natural progression for traders, early traders like myself at the time, is to get into technical analysis, because you kind of think, and the way it's marketed is that it has the answers. The chart has the answers. And if you just follow rule XYZ of technical analysis, you will make money. And so that's kind of what I did. I kind of just followed the textbook definition of, oh, this is a head and shoulders, inverse head and shoulders bottom. That means it's going up. This is a double top. That means you short. This is an ascending triangle. And the answer is no, the markets don't follow these textbook patterns. Of course, they are important and they inform your decision making, but there's always a random aspect to it. There's always a little bit of a fudge. It's never, almost never a perfect pattern. So that was kind of a huge step in my career, was that I went from kind of focusing so much on the details of the chart, of the technical analysis, and having all these indicators, RSI, MACD, stochastic RSI, et cetera, all this stuff. And I did that for like a year and a half. And I was kind of treading water. Things weren't really working. And then I started becoming more minimalist with the chart and really just getting rid of all that stuff and using the indicators only as confirmation of what the price action is doing. And for me, that's a huge benefit. And that's changed my whole perspective on the market, to just kind of follow the price action. Because as you said, the chart paints the emotions of the amalgamation of the emotions of all the participants in the world. So if you kind of get in that rhythm and understand the price action, to me, that's the key.
Can you speak more about that, your approach? Where you spend 80% of your time when you're thinking about the charts and the prices, and then also about this flow that you mentioned, like getting into kind of like this groove. There's, in everything, in running, when you're running, it's not that easy, but then you'll fall into a gate and you'll kind of get this momentum and you'll be sort of almost locked into the activity and into a position that's comfortable. When you're playing music too, it's way easier when you fall into this gate and you're able to like just kind of go with the flow. And then you're saying the same exact thing when you're trading. So can you kind of speak to like where you spend 80% of your time thinking about these things, and then also about the flow and how you've gone into the flow?
Sure. Yeah, I think the flow is so important. And sports, high achieving athletes call it like getting in the zone. And I look at trading kind of as a video game, but also kind of as a sport. And in normal sports, you have many leagues. You start out with like, the baby leagues as a kid, then you go to the whatever high school, then you go to college, then you go to minor leagues. Then if you're good enough, you go to majors. In the markets, there's one league. It's the major league. It's always the World Series every single day. So you got to bring your A game. You got to be in the zone. There's no preparation, or there's no, you know what I mean? There's no like, it's real every day. So for me, this is just a huge journey, and I'm still on this journey. And every year I'm doing this trading, I'm seeing that it goes deeper. Like it's crazy. It's almost like the Matrix. Like there's a new Matrix every year that I realize what's going on. And for me, I really have tried to kind of make a routine out of it and kind of really simplify it. Because honestly, a lot of it is like, I have a watch list and I go through the watch list of different coins. And you can kind of tell, like, if you kind of just let your eyes glaze over it quickly, you can kind of tell pretty quickly in your mind, is it bearish or bullish? You don't really have to think, you shouldn't be thinking too in depth and going too much and trying to overcomplicate it, because then you're going to be looking into things. You'd rather have a neutral mind, look at it, and if it's telling you nothing, it's telling you nothing. That you don't want to force it. But anyway, I draw a lot of trend lines, because I think the most important thing is the price, because you are actively trading the price. So that's what matters. There's news. It's so hard to predict news. Like good news comes out, the price crashes. Bad news comes out, the price pumps. It's so hard to predict. I saw a great quote from a renowned stock trader saying, show someone the S&P historical, the whole, whatever, 50 years plus, get rid of the date and ask someone, where were the wars in history? You probably wouldn't be able to tell, because you would kind of think wars mean the price crashes, but that's not always true. So for me, the price tells you everything. And for me, however, of course, fundamentals have an important part. So I try to focus on the places where the technicals meet the fundamentals. And so maybe the fundamentals, maybe there is some upcoming catalyst, maybe there is some narrative. Like for example, now Luna has, Terra Luna has, they basically have UST, and every time UST is redeemed, Terra is burned. And this was a narrative that not many people knew about. And the UST claim chart was going way up, and yet the price of Luna was kind of low. So the market hadn't quite digested that. So that was a good narrative. And then, so I kind of would love a coin where there's a good narrative. Then you look at the technicals, then you break it down between long-term and short-term. Long-term, are we close to relative bottom? Are we close to a relative top? And then zooming in, then you get more precise with your entry. So to me, that's important. But speaking a little more specifically, I really have found horizontal support and resistance lines are amazing. And not to discredit kind of the simple mindset, the simple strategy of support resistance. And of course, then kind of once I have a theory, like, oh, it seems like we bottomed at the support resistance, then I'll look to other technical indicators like Bollinger Bands, VPVR, which shows you the volume along the price as opposed to the volume along the date. Then VWAP a little bit, Guppy, etc., RSI, to kind of, and if those confirm what I believe, what my thesis is based on the price action, that's amazing. Like that, I want that. So I kind of look for those setups. And I have a whole 4-screen thing going on here, and I'm constantly watching the charts, constantly have alerts set up at different levels, and getting in the groove that way.
Wow, that's fascinating. There's so much there. So when it comes to like drawing horizontal lines, it seems pretty clear to me how these can work when it comes to support. So for instance, and I don't spend very much time in the charts, but last time I did, which was I think right around the top over the summer, was like for instance at 20K, I saw that there seemed to be a lot of demand support around the $20,000 price range for Bitcoin. And I thought that it seemed like that would be probably approximately the bear bottom, like support for Bitcoin long term. I don't know if you agree with that, but let me know. And also, my question really is now on resistance, I have trouble imagining how horizontal lines would help.
Sure. Yeah, I'm looking at the chart right now. For sure, 20K was the previous cycle top in 2018. So there's kind of a theory that, we never really go below the previous high, and the previous cycle high is always like the support. But with a lot of things with crypto and trading it's game theory. So if everyone is thinking that, right, then there's kind of like a fake out where it's like, oh, everyone is waiting for the 20K. And I remember in the summer when we were crashing down to 30K, people were calling for 20K because that made sense. That was the cycle low. People were there was extreme fear. So, there's kind of no easy answer for you. Sometimes it goes down, sometimes it doesn't, but you kind of have to be in the here and the now with trading. It forces you to be in the moment. So, I mean, if we look at the summer, we tipped multiple times, wicked into that 30K support. And if you just draw a line over 30K, you could see back in January 2021, we wicked into that multiple times. Summer, we wicked into it multiple times. So, that's what happened. And I don't fight the market. I don't say, oh, why didn't it go down to 20K? I was waiting. I'm angry. You have to be in the moment. You have to be flexible. You have to be like water and see that. And just really quickly about that 30K during the summer, basically we hit it once and then we kind of popped up. We kept hitting it. And then the final time I was there at the computer, the final time it hit that 30K, I was scared. I was like, we're going below. But then a part of my head was like, wait a second, we hit this multiple times. Why are we necessarily going to crash through on the 7th time? And it turns out that with Bitcoin, a lot of the times when it looks the worst, it looks like it's going to keep going down. That's actually the point of maximum opportunity on the reverse side, on the bull side. And those are just kind of things you pick up. And that's just my personal strategy, my personal instinct, my intuition for myself.
So I guess there's a few different angles we could take from there. I'm curious, mostly about where you think we are, I guess, right now in the scheme of things. Now, kind of to set you up, there was all sorts of talk about $250,000. Personally, I saw $100,000 is a significant number. However, because of the game theory aspect of all this that you mentioned, I certainly thought that that was kind of more like at the pop culture level, a big number, and that the veteran major league traders would perhaps recognize that and want to leave any profit on the table in the event that they had to leave any profit on the table and take their profits out a little bit lower. So I imagine that not Max Kaiser's $250,000, not whoever was calling for $100,000 prediction, but that we might see something a little bit closer to like 80K as like the top in this next cycle based on what everyone else was saying. However, I was speaking with someone this morning and they were saying that they think that we've seen a double top at this point in the market. They in 2019 had a video where they called for like $66,000 Bitcoin or something like that. They came pretty close to being correct, within 6% they claimed. And now they're even more confident. RL Breyer, you can follow him. He's not necessarily a trader. He does talk a lot about trading, but RL Breyer, at least a trading like influencer, but he talks a lot about trading. And so he is pretty confident now that we're looking at a double top. In Bitcoin, he cites the dog coin mania as sort of the maniacal phase of this run up, an irrational stage of this run up, and a symptom of kind of a top. Also, he claims we did see a blow off top to the $65,000-$66,000 range just recently. Where do you see the markets here in the short term and the long term? So short term, do you have any quick comments on that? But then I want to spend most of the time on long term. Sure.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. Everything you said. I tend to agree with that person, R. O'Brien. I do think January it felt so blow offy. Like I was there in January and Dogcoin went from less than a cent to, whatever. It went to, I think, 69 cents. And that's the meme potential. And it actually peaked on the day Elon Musk appeared on SNL. So it was a classic buy the rumor, sell the news event. And same with Bitcoin in April of this year, it topped on the day Coinbase had their IPO. Classic buy the rumor, sell the news event. And of course, we had kind of a bear for a couple months, and then we flipped back up to, guess what, $69,000. And then when we crashed most recently, what did we hit? 42,000. So 69,000 to 42,000. I do not discount the meme potential. I'm serious. It really has an effect. Yeah, I looking at the daily now, it kind of seems like that wick we just had, that capitulation wick to 42,000 was the low. That's what kind of the logical side of my brain says. But the more emotional side just glances at this and says, oh, this looks bad. Like this looks like we're in a downtrend. The guppy is clearly red for a long time. The moving averages are bearish. And I know, of course, everyone wants us to kind of get one more pump back up. But yeah, I think we're in a weird zone right now. We're at Bitcoin 48,000. It's in between. It's in between the ranges, the 30K bottom and the 69K top. We're right in the middle. It's kind of a no trade zone for me. And I think, I think also I was listening to a Twitter Spaces last night by Thinking BitMEX, and they were saying that they, in their opinion, we crossed the Rubicon. You know, crypto has really this year crossed into kind of, I don't want to say a new paradigm, but I'm going to say it. And it does feel like we're kind of mainstream. This is institutional. This is NBA players. You know, this is everyone kind of people I know that I've known for years that never bought Bitcoin are now buying Bitcoin. And obviously that's not a good sign. That's kind of a toppy sign, but you could argue that we're in a new paradigm. And now, you know, we all know crypto is going to be mainstream. Everyone's going to own it. It's going to be in people's pensions fund. It's going to be in every average person's retirement fund. So maybe we're kind of entering that phase now, and it's the beginning of that phase. But more short term, as I said, we're kind of in a no trade zone. So I think also a huge aspect of it is a lot of people had blockbuster 2021s, a lot of crypto people, because it wasn't that hard to make a lot of money. You know, Bitcoin 10x, Ethereum 20x. So I think a lot of people are selling for tax reasons. You know, I'm as well selling to have a tax cushion. You know, worst case, if this crashes, I don't want to be stuck with a huge bill that I can't pay. So yeah, so I think there's a lot going on.
Could you speak about some of the signals that might get you out of this no trade zone on both sides of the equation?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, if we had a huge wick down to 42, but then a huge pop. I was at the screen the other day when this happened. I tried buying close to 43K and exchanges froze because they're, you know, and then it popped up like 15% in like 25 minutes. So that's a healthy sign of a bottom. So if we dip back to that demand zone and there's not a bounce back and it just kind of trails down a little bit and like timidly bounces up and then kind of trails down, if I see that price action, that's not a good sign. I would expect that a lot of other people like me did not catch that wick. So we would hope that it gets down to that 42K and we would, you know, want to snap on that. And if the market is not snapping on that, that's a sign of a lack of demand at that level. So then I could see us kind of cutting through, slicing right through. So that's what I want to be looking at. And if that happens, then I'll cut some more. I've already kind of cut some closer to the 50K. But that's on the downside. On the upside, again, kind of if we get these bigger bounces, that's what I want to see. If we reclaim 52, you know, then, you know, that's more of confirmation. But in general, I'm definitely cautious. And I think a lot of people like myself kind of who survived the 2017, 2018 bear market, we have PTSD and it's real. And, you know, I don't want to go back to that, to losing most of my net worth, what felt like a quick time. It wasn't quick, it was over a year, but I don't want to, it was traumatic. So I need to walk out with something. So that's in the back of my mind. I'm constantly taking profit. So I think that's a huge factor.
Interesting. And so the guy who I mentioned was RL Breyer with a BRYER, I believe. And then, so Bitcoin, blockchain, crypto, it's all in a new paradigm. Hyper Bitcoinization is upon us. We're eating the world. Crypto is eating the world. So now that is a thesis we heard also in the 2017, 18 run up for sure. And it's, I think, a thesis that probably investors tell themselves about all of their investments at some point. Now, that's not really much of a thesis because, like, what evidence do we have for that? And like, how can we prove that it is therefore going to like have massive price implications that were kind of like the floor has just been moved up significantly. So the news is basically like Fortune 100 companies are buying Bitcoin to hold, or they're allowing their customers to use and trade crypto, like PayPal's announced. Nation states like El Salvador have declared Bitcoin legal tender, and not only that, but they are also buying the dips. So now we can't prove that that doesn't mean that, as you stated, the essentially like fundamentals or chart is the most powerful aspect of all this. Or actually, I'm not sure if you said that. I think actually RL said that earlier, that he thinks that like the chart trumps everything else, or the fundamentals chart everything else. And so all these stories might not have like a paradigm shifting effect. So can you kind of speak to how you at least ideate on all of these news events and all of these kind of shifts that have happened in the crypto markets?
Yeah. Narratives and emotion are the most powerful thing in these markets. And when you think about it, any market out there, any equity, any gold, crypto, et cetera, it's the price is completely subjective. And so in terms of the, so, and kind of as I mentioned, I focus more on the chart because the news and the fundamentals is so fickle, in my opinion, and it's hard to act on that. Like, and there's so much game theory and so much fake outs that it's so amazing to me through the years how swept up people get in these narratives, and they're often most bullish at the top and most bearish at the bottom, because they're thinking about, it's always about the narrative, where if you just unemotionally look at the chart and remove your own portfolio, which has your own emotions involved, and remove your own money from it and just look at the chart, that has so much more information to me, and is much more of a clear kind of clear evidence. So, you know, we actually topped at 69,000 in what is this, in November. I believe it was perhaps the day of the ETF, one of the most recent ETF came out. And, you know, in 2018, when we hit 20K, I remember it. People were just going crazy. They were, I myself, I was just like on top of the world. Just, yes, let's go. Like, we're going to 100K. And, you know, the higher you go, the more people raise their price targets, which is funny. Like, we were at 20K, you know, we were at 5K, people were saying, oh, 10K. We're at 10K, people were saying 50K. We're at 20K, people were saying 100K. So at what point is it like too much? But yeah, it's very interesting to me, and it's clearly a game, and there's clearly mass psychology involved, and you know, the market hurts the most number of people. It clearly does. You know, people are sheep in terms of this game. So, you know, there's just a lot to say, and there's a lot of factors and variables involved.
I guess, can we talk a little bit about the game theory of trading and the mass psychology? I guess, like for me, the numbers tell such a big story. Like for instance, in Bitcoin, you mentioned the power of the meme stuff. Like 69,420 is going to be a significant price level because everybody's just going to have their attention on it, just to like celebrate that moment on Twitter or on wherever, TikTok. And so now also, it's just like, for me, it's like $100, like $500, $1,000. You know, you can say $2,000, $10,000, $20,000. All these round numbers are so significant. $75,000, for instance. And recently we had it was at 65K. And then you got to take into the game theory aspect there. So you've got all these numbers laid out. I view them as kind of significant, just round numbers, as a real high level, like just introduction to further analysis. And then you got the psychology part here, where the smart major league traders aren't going to really trade based off of these numbers or make decisions based off these numbers. Generally speaking, they're going to want to, at the very least, like get out ahead of sort of these mass psychology events. Like 69,420 might have been one of those, although I can't prove that. Can you kind of speak to like how you reverse psychologize crypto traders?
Yeah. Yeah. It's and yes, and kind of in the moment, it's always you're so clouded and like, it's you get so caught up in it. But kind of give it a couple days, weeks, and you look back, and in retrospect, it's kind of so obvious. Like, oh, the Coinbase, or actually, sorry, in 2018, the Bitcoin peak 20K was the day the CME Bitcoin futures came out. It was a classic sell the news event. I went to a meetup of stock twits in Manhattan a couple like months later, and one of the CME vice presidents was there and kind of was talking about crypto. And afterwards, I went up to him and I said, "Do you know that the day your product came out was the top?" And he kind of like he kind of had a face on. He was like, "I know, we know," and it is just hilarious. And same with the Coinbase IPO, day it came out, I was just in a crazy long on our XRP, just six figures, just balls to the wall, up in profit, but you just get so swept up in it. And it's that is one of my goals as a trader in 2022 is to think more about that game theory and kind of, as you said, reverse engineer it and kind of deconstruct it, because you need to be ahead. You need to be ahead of the curve. And I think honestly, meditation helps a lot to kind of quiet the thoughts. Exercise, same thing. You feel better. You can think more clearly. You're not as impulsive. And the on-chain data, I think, is kind of important to get a sense of what the whales are doing, get a sense of how much Bitcoin is on exchanges versus in private wallets. And kind of with that, like, you have to take it all with a grain of salt. Like Elliott wave, like, oh, we've reached the 5-wave count, that's the top, on-chain data, etc. It's all relevant, but it's just one more data point. And I would say to the newer people, don't 100% rely on any one thing.
For those who don't know, can you tell us what the Elliott wave is?
Sure. Elliott, I'm by no means an expert, but Elliott wave essentially, I highly recommend people read the Elliott wave book by the original guys. Essentially, what they say is that in all markets, in all history, there is this 5-wave pattern: up, down a little bit, correction, third wave up higher, down correction usually hits the support, and 5th wave. And that 5th wave is usually the top. And then we go into the next, so that's like a minor wave. Then we go into a correction ABC, 1, 2, 3. And then we go into the next 3rd wave. I might not be explaining it the best, but essentially they're saying that market participants, that it's so curious that throughout all of history in every single asset class, they follow this pattern. And they've looked at the S&P, they've looked at gold, whatever. And, there's a lot, the critics say it's kind of BS, that it's astrology, witchcraft. But when I read the book actually kind of looks at this from kind of a liberal arts perspective on like sociology of like, there is something weird. Like you look at the golden ratio in nature, and nature follows these certain patterns. And like, we are humans, so we are part of nature. So it kind of makes sense that we're following certain psychological patterns. And if you want to get deeper, it's like, oh, does it reveal something about some type of simulation? Like, this is evidence that we're all part of the simulation. Just interesting theories. But so certain traders use Elliott wave on the long frame and on the short to kind of pinpoint where exhaustion is in sells or buys or whatever. And Philicone is a trader on Twitter. He uses it for years. That's part of his strategy. But yeah, so I recommend people read that book. It's not so technical, the Elliott wave book. It's more sociological.
We've had the honor and privilege of sitting down today with Derek Gumb, an independent crypto trader. Thank you so much, Derek, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Justin. This was great. I really appreciate the ability to be on here.
Excellent. And thank you everyone for listening.